I hope you had a good, first of all, lunch, and then the working group indeed help you to digest your lunch, and not the opposite. And I hope that the working group itself gave you an opportunity to do two things that we were hoping that we can do in this important gathering. One is the opportunity and the space to interact and know each other a little bit better, at least for 2 hours. And the second thing is to create a space for you in order to be able to brainstorm, generate some concrete suggestions, ideas that you think both Kaisid and you, as member of this family or community of practice, you're able to focus on them, or you think they are priorities. Our plan for this last session is to combine the conclusion in some ways as well as the working group outputs. So the plan is to hear from each group their recommendation or their suggestions, and then open it for comments and discussion if possible. And then around 5:30, which I think will give us about 40 minutes from now, actually 50 minutes from now, we will invite our board member, esteemed board member, and our Secretary General to close this 2 days gathering. But that will be very brief, don't worry, by that time. So we've taken precautions. So maybe just word of advice. As you notice, this is not a conference to produce declaration or a joint declaration. That's not our intention. We've done that in 2014. The purpose here was to do two things: launch the network platform in the Arab region of Muslim, Christian, religious leaders, and as a first phase. And the second was to look at the themes that Kaisid work on: social cohesion, religious education, and social media, and look at them from multi-region, multi-faith, from experts and also from religious leaders as well. So we had those two areas of interest to accomplish. You have on your table forms in Arabic and in English. They are evaluation forms. Please, if you can give us your feedback and you give us your input in order for us to improve our performance and learn from our mistakes, we would appreciate that. And once you finish that evaluation form, around 5:30, one of the ushers or two of them will come to the table in order to collect those forms. English and Arabic, you only have to choose one, either English or Arabic, in order to fill your evaluation. Thank you again, and we'll remind you one more time with it. Without further ado, maybe we can start with group number 1 and their report on social media as a space for dialogue. So we are not going to try and revise them linguistically. What we will look at answering the question, were they comprehensive, or were they addressed important gaps in the field? No language comments, don't worry about this. Kaisid staff and team can polish them later. And if you want to add to them, would be good. If you want to have a clarification question, that will be also appreciated. So can we have the first group, please? And whoever assigned to represent it. You're here? Excellent.
Well, thank you very much for this. The first group was very diverse, and we had several religious leaders among us. So that should have provided and did provide a bit more depth and ethics to our discussions, which sometimes with the social media, of course, tend to get more technical, operational. Where do I point this? This direction? Okay. When we say Kaisid and Company, we mean members of this incipient emerging network of religious leaders, of course, civil society, faith-based organizations, and other like-minded actors, because as will be explained later, many of the agenda items we are sharing with society at large. So the first sort of strategic point, there will be two slides, one of them on the more strategic points and the other one on the more organizational and operational side. So, of course, the narratives and the counter-narratives and target audience are the sine qua non with which any sort of communication strategy will start. So we do have to know, and there needs to be elaboration on the what the network should communicate. As a sort of an enabler and a common platform for other actors as well is the precondition for responsible social media use that lies in the area of information literacy, media literacy, and critical thinking that is developed in and out of the education system. There was a point about ethics which encourages us to always use social media responsibly and promote an ethical view of the world. Frequent references were made to character, development, and ethics as a basis for not only the world's religions, of course, but the world at large. Social media is just one tool in the communications toolbox. Our beautiful the first half of it was discussing effects it plays in today's world. There were frequent arguments about how divisive the discourse is, how it tends to reinforce the prejudices and the bubbles, but also a larger point about the physical world in which a communication strategy must also be rooted. So if there is strategic communications and the toolbox, social media is just one of them. And many participants made the point that they actually go out in the physical world, they meet people, and that human contact and human intelligence may never be replaced by social media communications. Now, as I said earlier, the secular world is sometimes written off as almost an enemy to religion, whereas in reality, there are so many actors in the democratic pluralistic societies that share our agenda points, from poverty to terrorism to any social justice, climate change. So any sort of outreach strategies must map out and network with other institutions in the common areas of interest. The so-called secular media that might reinforce some of the negative trends in our secular societies may actually be allies in promoting pro-democratic, pro-ethical points. And then traditional media education, of course, are other conduits of our communications. So in the discussion of what can be done, we focus not only on the network and on Kaisid and the partners, but also on the platforms themselves. And it is the case, it is a fact of life, that Facebook and Google and others are very slowly adopting more ethical approaches to controlling content that should be, illegal in some cases and immoral in most cases. And so there needs to be pressure, coordinated pressure, and religious actors join those who are arguing, the human rights, for example, organizations who are arguing, pressuring these platforms, or political parties to act in socially responsible ways, to remove propaganda, to remove hate speech in much faster ways than they're doing at the moment. An important point about tailoring communications to individual nations, where something may be a problem in another country, it may be a solution. So, you need to approach each country, even group maybe, differently. And the initial question was posed that what is actually the challenge that we're trying to overcome with social media communications, and there was consensus in the group that the main cause of hate speech is ignorance, and that can take three forms. There's either a lack of information at all, people don't have information, don't have access to it. There is misinformation or disinformation, the difference between the two being that misinformation, that disinformation is a deliberate manipulation of the truth and information, and misinformation is another hoax that's created and propagated. And there's the very important aspect of cognitive dissonance. That means that you're only taking in messages that are aligned with your worldview. So factual may be out there, it may be out in the world, but you're basically sort of shutting yourself out from that. So social media can help with overcoming the challenge of ignorance. All right, and this is about the more operational side of it. Every communication needs to answer the three questions of who communicates, what do they communicate, and how they communicate. So we talked about issues and narratives. The mainstream is very important, sort of mainstream narratives, mainstream thinking, the status quo of a national conversation almost, and any actor who wants to impact that needs to know the mainstream narrative. That's on the what, and then align their messaging or react to the mainstream narratives, counter or reinforce a certain line of thought that's out there. The who communicates. It's not necessary to underline the multiplying role of influencers. And the how of communication, any strategy must address what channels are available and then apply the tools. This will be in the capacity building side. Peace voices have credibility and they need to build and develop their own credibility. An important principle in working with the other is to listen before engaging, then to sort of build on the message that the multipliers are already promoting that are supposed to help us, and then come in with your own message that is complementary to or adding on the message that these influencers and multipliers or outside actors are already propagating. And then an important point about capacity building, CAICID, if it wants to really become truly a platform, then it should think about enabling these actors in order to communicate effectively. And there, apart from recognizing the importance of social media in today's world, you can't wish them away, they're simply there. A lot of our communication still doesn't use the marketing skills and tools that are available. We're approaching it as basically a traditional medium, and a lot more marketing skill and finesse should be applied. And Ayman, I think, made that point. Use analytical tools. Analytics is actually a very strong side of the social media. It's almost instantly checkable whether your message reached the audience and how effective you were. Creative communities, you know, arts societies, image and sound are very important in relaying the message rather than text these days. So, and creative communities can help to propagate that. And of course, schools and universities are, should be natural actors and milieus in which to build these networks. So thank you very much on behalf of all of Group 1 for listening, and all the best to Kaisid to put this plan into action, the incipient plan into action. All the best.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Just one correction, not all the best luck for Kaisid, all the best luck for everybody in this room, not only Kaisid, to move on and implement this. Thank you for Group 1 for giving us a combination of really guidelines for how to do social media programming with some interesting principle. I'm going to take about 7 minutes from you for any observation, comment on this group, and then we'll move to the next group. Any suggestion from the list of guidelines, the recommendation? Is there major things that are missing if you want to make any suggestions? I think we're exhausting you enough to say whatever you want, move with. Okay, yes.
The focus of this gathering is and should be the platform, right? Therefore, you see, we have to look at the platform in a realistic way.
Yes.
In a realistic way in terms of, you see, how we can bring religious leaders and institutions together within the framework of platform in a realistic way.
Thank you.
You see, putting all these realities, notions, it's very much theoretical. We need to be down to earth.
Yes.
In terms of how we can develop this process of what we call the platform. It should be a continuation process,
yes,
but a realistic one.
Thank
This
you.
is what I would like to suggest.
Thank you. And thank you for the suggestion of emphasizing, one, the sustainability and to be practical, because you mentioned yesterday not to put too much emphasis and burden on the platform. The other point that was emphasized here was the cookie cutter thing, the template. You cannot use something in Nigeria and take it to Central African Republic or to Iraq or Syria or Egypt and with the same template. They were saying to contextualize the work, social media work differently in different contexts. Any other observation on the social media recommendations? Yes, please. Yes, try to speak to the microphone.
Okay. Was there any consideration to alert users, especially young people, in some of the potential dangers of using the internet so that they're aware when they go on and how they use it?
Right, so that's question to the group. Feel free to respond to it, and maybe you also making it as a suggestion. Were there any special discussion whether alert or caution how the youth are using social media in a way that's not necessarily constructive? Is that correct, your answer? Anybody wants to respond? Yes, please.
Yeah, of course, I will respond. There was no special approach to this. It came up in the ethics dimension of using social media responsibly, but we did not delve into the any sort of educational side of how to do it. We rather focused on promoting certain messages through the social media and enabling the different actors who are willing to use it, rather than sort of immunizing the young generation against the dangers, which is of course a legitimate part of the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. So youth, children, different sectors were not addressed. They went for the generic thematic approach. Thank you for your observation. We'll keep the floor open also for the next one. Can I invite the second group to give their report on interreligious education and common citizenship?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I find everyone a bit exhaustive, but hope you hear me. This is a very important subject, interreligious education and common citizenship values. Okay. In our group, there were almost, I believe, 35, around 30 to 35 participants were there, and all were very intellectual. They gave, each and everyone gave their inputs. We have discussed on all the recommendations made by the CAICEDs, and based on key points that CAICED had drafted, we discussed, and the recommendations made are here, which I would like to read out. Some corrections had been made, some recommendations which the team did not suggested were not included in this. So I will not read out the key points. I'll just read the recommendations that is here on the screen. All theological institutions should be either encouraged or show their interest in interreligious education and common citizenship. They should develop a religious discourse based on peace, coexistence, and social cohesion. Next is, religious groups must proactively make efforts to include religious education in school curricula. Religious education should aim to enable learners of all ages to have an authentic and reliable source of knowledge, spiritual orientation, and familiarity with their own religion. Educate about their faiths from the perspective of those faiths. Build up an attitude of openness and acceptance towards other religions, taking into account the society in which the students are living. Lessen any tensions arising between conflicting identities and demands to help children take their place in pluralistic society. Provide a safe space for dialogue where young people's concerns can be heard in order to prevent feelings of ostracization and social extremism. Build bridges between school, community, parents, and religious institutions, and even the state in cases where refugees may be struggling to adapt to the prevailing system. Where it is not. West side. People have to be confident in their own faith in order for them to open up to others. If you are insecure, you cannot be in dialogue. Start by training a generation of trainers, teachers, and religious leaders to teach the principle of coexistence and social cohesion. Strive to expose students to diversity and widen their horizons. Attitudes of openness and confidence are learned outside the classroom. Encourage also intra-religious dialogue education. CAICED will conduct research into interreligious education models and options worldwide to put onto its online resource platform. So these are the recommendations. We have looked into the students, learners of all age group, and accordingly, our group has recommended these points. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you again for group number 2, and we'll follow the same pattern. Are there any observation about religious education, priority, gaps, experience that you think they missed? Yes, please. If you can say your name so
Sure.
people will relate to you.
Bishop James Massa, New York City, Brooklyn. I was in the group, and it was a very good discussion, but we really never got around to defining citizenship or common citizenship, and I think that's an ongoing task for the work of this conference. For example, there's also no reference to human rights education, or how citizenship is an analogous term. It has very different meanings in secular discourse. There's ancient Greek citizenship, there's Enlightenment, Western 18th century citizenship, notions of citizenship. What do we mean by that? And then what are the contributions of different religious traditions to the notion of citizenship? And then in the 20th century, in the 21st century, we arrive at common citizenship. What is that? What is meant by that? We need a white paper. We need something to flesh this out.
Thank you. A member of the same group, the 30 or so, did you talk about common citizenship? Was citizenship at all part of your conversation? And I think you're making a suggestion to add it to the list of recommendations, both in terms of research and programming. Any response? Yes, go ahead.
May I answer?
Yes.
Yeah, he was part of the group, and yes, we did not had very wide discussion on common citizenship, but yes, according to education part, we took the education part and the curricula, which has to be included in the education curricula of either it is interreligious education part or common citizenship for the students or the adolescents, teenagers. So it was the common citizenship with the common values.
Okay.
Common citizenship with the common values.
Thank you. But this is also important to mention that from yesterday, we had with the session with Dr. Azza Karam, she mentioned human rights was also missing from some conversation, and this is another opportunity where we can highlight the education for human rights as part of the interreligious education. Yes, Your Eminence.
In monotheistic religions, family has a central role. Family is a sacred institution. Unfortunately, in secularistic and permissive societies, we have lost the sacredness and centrality of family. Family has a pivotal role in education. The real education takes place in the family. Therefore, I strongly suggest that in these recommendations, the family be given an important place as a basic and vital instrument for religious education.
Thank you. Thank you. And indeed, theoretically and practically, the field of education, not only religious education, today when you talk about education, it expanded to parents, to neighborhood, and beyond the unit of the school, and you're making a very valid suggestion to include that as well. Yes, Sayyidina. Tfaddal. Can you help him, please?
نحن اقترحنا في
We have suggested in this second group, we have made two suggestions actually. First, to establish a committee of intellectuals and religious leaders so as to draft a book to be used in schools and to teach with this book citizenship and other national values. Another suggestion was to establish a joint religious and cultural education institute where students can study and graduate and obtain certificates, diplomas, and then so as to be able to teach all the objectives of CAICID, excuse me, and disseminate the culture of peace. Thank you.
And one, for CAICID to invest more in producing material curriculum to be taught in religious institutions on issues of diversity, pluralism, and dialogue. Not only in, I'm adding this from me, not only in the Arab world, but also in Europe and Africa and other area region where CAICID is involved. And the second one is to have an institution for joint institution or multi-faith institution to teach these type of themes as well. Yes, Dr. Asma.
أنا من المجموعة الثانية أسماء كفتار.
I'm Asma Kaftaru from the second group. I would like to add that we have suggested or made a suggestion regarding women's empowerment within the framework of diversity, and we also showcased that the citizenship is not only limited to religious diversity, since it also encompasses all kinds and forms of diversity. So we have tackled the citizenship concept. However, I would like to emphasize the importance of empowering women and enhancing women's participation and to take the gender issue into consideration.
She is emphasizing a usual pitfall or a mistake happen in interfaith dialogue when they talk about diversity, that they talk only about religious diversity and forget other forms of diversity. She's making a recommendation to expand the concept of diversity to include gender and other aspects of diversity. And she's saying in particular gender, but there are other areas. Thank you. That's an important addition. Good. Yes, Ustad Masroor from Iraq.
شكرا دكتور.
I'm Masroor Al-Aswad from Iraq. We have suggested to enhance the role of religious leaders by establishing a committee by CAICID, a committee encompassing religious leaders from all religions so as to work on citizenship and human rights, and then ask all ministries in all Arab countries to deepen the concept of citizenship, i.e. tolerance, acceptance of the others, etc., including respecting the role of women and youth in all fields.
To be inventing the wheel. I know for a fact that SEOS, or the Intercultural Dialogue Forum in Egypt, have worked very closely on material Muslim, Christian, faith, look at the notion of citizenship, and they were trying to implement it. So that's a good recommendation. Maybe you can also connect with them, but we'll certainly add this to the recommendation. Multi-faith approach to citizenship to be material available, to be shared and taught. I am afraid. Yes, go ahead. That would be our last intervention for this group. That will leave us with 15 minutes for the remaining. Yes.
Thank you very much. The point about family, I
Yes.
was in the group. I think the discussion talked about formal education, interreligious education, but we also talked about informal and non-formal, and that's where the family comes in. So I'm sure that in the selection of the recommendations, that one was left behind.
Thank
so
you.
I'm sure the family will be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Oshita from the Peace and Conflict Resolution Center in Nigeria, to add informal, not only formal education to the list.
I just want to make a clarification here. In the recommendations, we have shown only 10 points, but rest all suggestions that came from all the participants will be included in the final report.
Terrific.
None of them will be left out. And
Thank
all
you.
these has been discussed.
Thank you.
And we welcome all the suggestions that we heard just now from the other
Good.
group. Thank
So-
you. Thank you very much.
So regardless the voting outcome that you had, you're including everything in that list.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's, yes, Swami. Can somebody give, Swami, you'll have the last word on this group, please, briefly.
I don't claim to say the last word, but I have a suggestion, and that
Yes.
is, we are expecting religious institutions and also religious states
Yes.
to provide interreligious education. It's very high expectation.
Yes.
Religions are predicated on exclusivity. And if they lose their exclusivity, it's a great threat to them.
Okay.
Those the custodians of religion.
Thank you.
And having said that, I feel all religions have got the quintessence values of truth, love, compassion, justice. These are the spiritual values,
Thank you.
and not ritual, not dogma, not superstition, and not any of the miracle mongering. Now, if religions can do a bit of heart searching themselves and say that these are our spiritual core values, and these core values should be the part of education and not ritualistic religion, not dogmatic religion.
Thank you.
And children should be taught, sort of encouraged to question religious authority, even if it is a scripture, textbook, or whatever history. And they should be taught 3 Ds. First D is to doubt. The second D is to debate. And third D, and the most important one, the last but not the least, if necessary, to dissent. D-I-S-S-E-N-T. If every child could be given this basic human right value of doubt, debate, and dissent,
Thank
then
you.
the child will grow from within, evolve from within.
Thank you, Swami.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And
I
then
think
only we will arrive at the truth.
Thank you. Thank you for the suggestion, for reiterating the core shared value
Yeah,
that should
and-
be the foundation
And the
for
fourth-
this
fourth-
curriculum.
Fourth D is dialogue.
Thank you.
Then only dialogue follows. Thank you.
Doubt, debate, dialogue. You realize we're not going to design those curriculum here. We're just making some generic suggestion. So thank you for that point. May I thank you again for everybody. May I invite our last group, but not least, on social cohesion. I think they had the easiest task.
A very good evening to you all. We are Group 3, Social Cohesion and Collaboration between Religious Leaders and Policymakers. So, very diverse and vibrant group. We had very focused and productive discussions, so let me extend our appreciation to all of our group members. But most importantly, our group upholds the equitable participation of women and men. And therefore, we have 2 presenters here today upholding gender equality. Thank you. So recommendation number 1 is that religious leaders should be aware of the risks of being instrumentalized by policymakers. This is indeed a very sensitive area, and there's a fine balance to be adopted here. But it is about religious leaders being able to maintain their dignity and the values associated with their beliefs when having these conversations with policymakers. Recommendation number 2 is religious leaders should be more proactive and take initiatives against violence in the name of religion rather than being firefighters. So there's something here about words being translated into actions and the impact of those actions. How can we share success stories of where tension has been diffused by the involvement of religious leaders and religious communities? So transforming condemnation into concrete actions. Recommendation number 3 is around programs being more inclusive of civil society actors and all members of the community. So inclusivity was a core theme of our discussions, and this is about having an exemplary model, a model which when we reach out to policymakers, we can show that we're including people, we're reducing inequalities, and that the model we have benefits from the rich diversity within our communities. We also mentioned the importance of eliminating racism as well within our groups. Number 4 is about creating, ensuring and promoting opportunities of active engagement for women, youth, traditional leaders, indigenous people, people of spiritual expression, and through dialogues and initiatives creating safe spaces for the involvement with religious leaders and policymakers. This will help to then promote social cohesion. And just to add to this point, there's something about having all of these representations within religious leadership, and that is so important. So from the grassroots to the leadership levels. And recommendation number 5 is to enhance working relationships between religious leaders and policymakers to advocate for social cohesion without politicizing religion. So this is about building constructive relationship, but also not to reinvent the wheel as well. So how do we work with our existing networks? How can we make good use of the relationships that have already been built up, and not to expend our energy, time, resources on trying to create something new when we have models there for us? And now I will hand over to Musi for the next 5.
The other recommendation, religion leaders should make a strong common stand against the violations that are happening throughout the world, particularly violation of human rights and human dignity and related atrocity, through formal statements that should be issued on behalf of the participants. Continue to invest in inter and intra-faith training and encourage people to learn more about their own religions, particularly for policymakers, the officials, and security service. Share successful interreligious dialogue initiatives and stories on the ground. Encourage experience sharing between different interreligious dialogue platforms from different countries. Advocate for the implementation of different UN General Resolution on interreligious and intercultural cooperation to create a culture of peace and prevention of incitement, and work in partnership with policymakers on issues like promoting common citizenship and common shared value, preventing violent extremism, build trust and understanding, address environmental protection and the climate change issue, the implementation and popularization of Sustainable Development Goal that comprises all the 17 elements, and addressing social justice, introducing peace education in the school curriculum starting from the kindergarten, and introducing clear policy against hate speech as part of prevention against atrocity.
Thank you again. We have 6 minutes and 15 seconds to conclude this section. Did you notice what did you notice about the social cohesion and the way they address religious leader? Any observation on this? Yes, Your Eminence.
Too much advice to religious leaders.
Good.
I
good.
propose that first we change the language.
Okay.
The way we put that, you should do this, you should not do this. The language needs to be revised.
Thank you.
Secondly, there is a reference, you see, to the religious leaders in Lebanon. If I understand correctly, it's been put in a negative way. Can you bring it back, that the one is
Can
on
you
Lebanon?
please bring it back to check? Can you
Well,
help me bring it back?
Anyhow,
We'll check it, Your
yeah,
Eminence.
please check it.
We will, definitely.
Because we believe
Thank
that we are, you see, we are playing a positive role in Lebanon, all the religious leaders of Lebanon.
Thank you. We'll make sure to clean that. May I thank Your Eminence? I drop this note, what's the language, because we don't use should. That usually create a defensivism among them. So go ahead, Sheikh Hussein al-Samarrai, brief, يعني معك بس وقت قصير ها.
You just have very little time. Please don't limit my time. Thank you. Thank you very much for this very good workshop, very international and good conference. I think CAICID always cares for dialogue and to eradicate discrimination and extremism, and always calls for peaceful coexistence, because CAICID's point of view is always for peace, but maybe we could go beyond the scope of this conference, because we all heard what happened in Al-Ghouta in Syria, and maybe we could also point out what happens there to women, to children.
For this conference to produce a statement in the name of the participants against the killing and the civilian loss in Al-Ghouta in Syria. However, as I said, maybe this gathering is not to produce a statement. That I'm sure there are people from CAICID here, the leadership of CAICID, both religious and political, who will take that consideration. And I'll say you are calling for CAICID to issue a statement on that issue. So thank you for that suggestion.
Please use the microphone. We cannot hear the speaker, unfortunately. Thank you. Please use the microphone. Kindly use the microphone.
Syria
Thank you.
That need to be addressed. This is where I believe we will be making a misuse of religion.
Correct.
We are exploiting religion into political interest. I prefer we avoid that. Otherwise, we would like to see all such events be addressed, whether in Syria or outside Syria.
Dr. Riyad, I deliberately tried to avoid this by saying this gathering is not to issue statements. This is not a place for declaration. This was a space that CAICID created for learning together, for reflecting on our professional work, and for launching an important initiative platform in the Arab world. But I hear your request for CAICID governing bodies, if they would consider issuing a statement, and as I said, the message is given to them, and they have their guidelines, and they have their own statements, procedure, as they usually do. Believe me, the message have arrived in that sense. Can I take other responses on the list?
Can I?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Besnik Tahiri, and I'm from International Governance Consulting Group. I'm from Kosovo. I was part of the group. I think one element that we have discussed, we need to reiterate once again. We said that there is a need for social cohesion, for cooperation at the grassroots level. And I also suggested that there is necessity to have greater cooperation between local government, municipalities, as policymakers and religious leaders. They know each other there. They live together. There is nothing to be afraid or nothing to be instrumentalized because they live together. And only if they are together they can deliver on the dialogue and on the cohesion.
Thank you for specifying the direction. I also noticed that recommendation of this group are more leaning of what should the religious leader do and less on the policy making responsibility. And remember, the session was about how the two of them can work together. And it seemed that maybe because of time, you did not have time to address what are the areas of collaboration from the policymaker response as well. We have a few seconds only. Yes, please.
Please kindly use the microphone, as interpreters cannot hear the speaker.
The group that I visited, you were saying we should not look at minority terminology. We should be more inclusive by looking at the social cohesion based on citizenship, common citizenship, regardless the number of people in that component in the society. Yes, yes, please, ma'am. The woman with the white, yes, from...
Just a quick clarification on the Lebanese recommendation. Of course, we are very lucky in Lebanon to have exceptional religious leaders who have always been known for the role they are playing, whether in dialogue or social cohesion. But I think it was formulated in a way, so to avoid any misunderstanding, the idea was to say that, because we were talking about cooperation between policymakers and religious leaders, and the idea was to say that, of course, it is necessary, however, with clear description of roles, because very often religious leaders are asked to cover for the failures of the state or the government, and which is not very sound for societies.
Thank
you.
you.
The clarification.
And I think this is good clarification. I want to stop here, but I want to tell you that I am accepting the implicit recommendation that says let's not name any country, because among policymakers and diplomats, they always try not to name any country and they speak in general terms. But again, I think we'll follow that the same. There is no need to specify any country in those recommendations, but we'll take the principle of learning from the different experiences in different regions. So that's how I'm hoping we can proceed. I want to just say last word here that we will put the report for those lessons, those recommendations, and the photos and the narration and the discussion and the speeches that you heard from yesterday, all will be available on our website as a material for you to see when we finish our report. So hopefully nothing can be lost in that, in the conversation or outputs that you have provided. And please make sure that you communicate with us if you have any further suggestion regarding recommendations for future operation. Please thank yourself for a great... Excellent, thank you. At least that clapping allow me to transit to our last segment of the program for the 2 days. And it is an honor to invite our honorable and dear board members and also our Secretary General to give us very brief remarks and reflection on the day. And we are doing this deliberately because we started with the COP, the governing board, and now we're ending with the religious board or institution who govern CAICID, and we put you as a sandwich in the middle. We start with the policy and we end with a word from the religious leaders institution. Dr. Hamad Al-Majid, please join us. And this is alphabetic order. Dr. Hamad Al-Majid. Dr. Kezevino Aram. She's not here. Yes, thank you. You'll find your name, I think, in the as this order. His Excellency Bishop Miguel Ayuso. Please, usher, help them to find their seat. His Eminence Metropolitan Emmanuel. The Reverend Kosho Niwano. His Virtue Shaykhul Islam Al-Shukur Pasha Zadi. Reverend Mark Paulson. Reverend Mark Paulson. Thank you. Chief Rabbi David Rosen. Chief Rabbi David Rosen, who's filming, and Dr. Muhammad Al-Sammak. Dr. Muhammad Al-Sammak. And may I, thank you, and may I invite our Secretary General, Faisal bin Abdurrahman bin Muammar. Tfaddal. Thank you. And again, I will invite Dr. Majid to say few words of reflection on this gathering for the last 2 days, and will be here to assist you if needed. Thank you.
Thank you. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد والثناء كله لله عز في علاه والصلاة والسلام.
May peace be upon you all, may praise of God be upon you all, and upon the our messenger Muhammad, upon all messengers and prophets. Good are those who establish the principles of dialogue, regardless of the differences between people and humankind. Ladies and gentlemen, may peace and God's blessing be upon you. In an article I published, which was published today in the Al-Sharq Al-Awsat newspaper, which is an international newspaper, as you know, some questions which I posed personally to some persons which we sometimes meet in different parts of the world. Speaking to some of those people, we ask ourselves, now with all gratitude, with all respect, with all appreciation for the efforts of CAICID and also the efforts of all other centers of dialogue, and with all due respect to your esteemed objectives while organizing conferences and workshops on dialogue and peaceful coexistence, and also the seminars you organize for participants from all parts of the world, and everything going along with these efforts. May they be efforts on the media, here and there, with these and those. We never see that you grow tired. The number of centers for dialogue and also conferences around peaceful coexistence, the number of them are rising. But on the other hand, we have conflicts, we have religious conflicts, we have ethnic conflicts, we have racial conflicts, we have conflicts of all kinds. May they be linked to religion or not, their number also rises. This, ladies and gentlemen, according to my point of view, are very crucial questions we should look into, we should try to find an answer to, because it is undoubtedly that who poses those questions might not know anything about the objectives and strategies and also activities of conferences and centers working on peaceful coexistence and dialogue. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, all of us know and are aware that conferences and as well as centers for dialogue, which are organized all around the world, shall not have a magical recipe in order to find a due solution for ethnical, religious, racial, and other conflicts around the world. Though these conferences, these centers are aware of the need, of the high need to find the solution. Now we have centers like CAICID, for instance, who launches the more intensified dialogue between religions and cultures. After having the honor of joining the first meeting of the board of directors of CAICID in this very esteemed center, I saw what great impact, what very practical impact the efforts of CAICID has with the aim of disseminating a culture of awareness to the importance of dialogue and the necessity of dialogue, especially in our times, in times of where we find the parties on the extreme right getting more and more members, where we find extremists and people having very negative impact on societies, getting even more and more influence. That is why I see that centers like CAICID take one step after the other. So I see it's just following the English saying, slowly but surely. Now, my experience with CAICID also enhanced my conviction that centers for dialogue and conferences for dialogue and peaceful coexistence are undoubtedly a necessity in our times, a necessity in order to find solutions, in order to stop the fires of religious, ethnical, and racial conflicts, which find their way around the world and get dangerous and more dangerous. Thank you very much. Peace be upon you.
Dr. Aram, to give your brief remarks.
My first encounters about the value and the purpose of interfaith dialogue started in the vast expanse of India, where religion and faith had coexisted for a long, long time and was related to the lives of people. I go back to an incident when I was 19 and in the medical school in India, when I was pulled up for being not part of the classroom for about 9 days. My professor called me and asked me, why were you absent from those classes? And I said, I had gone for an international youth conference. This professor looked at me and said, very good, when he heard the first 3 words, International Youth Conference. But very quickly came a word of reprimand when he said, what kind of conference was this? And I said, it was an interfaith youth conference. And he looked at me and he said, you should do this when you're 60. Now is the time to study. Now is the time to focus on your profession. But in that very environment, 4 months later, there was a communal riot in my city. 135 people died in a serial bomb blast. And my medical school was commissioned to start the medical clinics in these places. and quietly came a call, your professor wants to see you. They wanted volunteers from different traditions, but also potential doctors to be working there. I say this to you because those of us who are gathered here are convinced that dialogue and dialogue between religions must continue, that we must continue the dialogue in expanding circles, but we must still convince brothers and sisters of the actual relevance of this in our everyday lives. Yes, conflicts have risen. Yes, the impact of violence and conflicts have increased their footprint around the world, but the desire and the hunger for peace is also expanding. More and more people want to work together. More and more young people want to work with their leaders in shaping the future of their communities. Men and women working together within and beyond faith communities will have this not only as a solution to the growing problems around them, but men and women working together will also give rise to an image that the future will hold for itself as true to the reality that this world must coexist. It will give to our own communities, but to the world at large, that collective image of shared peaceful coexistence, where peace will be able to build and layer not only the aspirations for progress, but for the great grand scheme of inclusive development. I am extremely honored to be here together with distinguished leaders from around the world, but equally honored to hear the voices, the questions, the experiences from around the world. That is what I have been here this morning, from this morning to evening. And I was just telling Ila Gandhiji how wonderful it has been to see this balance between voices from the podium and voices of experience from the ground. This is the new model of dialogue. Dialogue where everybody has a place, where the leaders listen and the communities gather to share what their leaders must represent on their behalf. Gandhiji reminded us that every big step towards change need not be a loud, violent revolution. Mahatma Gandhi said, in a gentle way you can shake the world. And Secretary General, I hope that our work together, our deliberations in conference halls and on the ground will be echoing that message of Mahatma Gandhi, that in a gentle way we can surely shape the world. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. May I invite His Excellency Bishop Ayuso to give us his brief remarks. Thank you.
Your Beatitude, Your Eminencies, Excellencies, dear brothers and sisters, as the representative for the Catholic Church on the Board of Directors of the International Dialogue Center, CAICID, I would like just briefly to share my experience in these years of collaboration in promoting dialogue through this intercultural and interreligious exchange that is CAICID. Let me begin with a warm and sincere thanks to all of you for the work done in these 5 years we are celebrating of CAICID's history. Thank you for your efforts, for your energy and determination in pursuing the ideal of dialogue despite the difficulties and misunderstandings that marked the beginning of our work. But most of all, thank you for helping to direct the efforts of our International Dialogue Center more and more towards a true commitment to peace and reconciliation. How necessary peace and reconciliation are in our days and in our world. So in need in promoting a culture of dialogue, a culture of inclusivism, respectful of every human person, so as together to promote a solidarity directed towards the common good. Unfortunately, many areas of the world suffer from a lack of such a unity. For this, we cannot but express our sorrow and support towards all those nations afflicted by war and conflict. The immense movements of refugees and migrants fleeing the horror of war shall find us united in compassion and aware of the urgency to address the present challenges. Over the past 5 years, CAICID made clear its vocation to serve as a center for discussing interreligious and intercultural issues, as well as offering formation to all persons, groups, private and public, who requested it. Your Beatitudes, Your Eminencies, Excellencies, dear brothers and sisters, the agenda, since we are looking forward ahead, the agenda for the next 5 years shall see us committed in expanding not only the number of members, but also the quality of our work, of our intergovernmental organization, so as to become more and more effective and focus on providing those critical answers to the new problems emerging at a global level. I wish CAICID heartfelt success in serving the cause of dialogue in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now I invite His Eminence Metropolitan Emmanuel to give us his brief remark.
Your Beatitudes, Your Eminencies, Mr. Secretary General, dear participants, dear colleagues, I should not repeat what my esteemed colleagues just mentioned. But I would like to start by thanking those who had the idea of founding this center, of establishing this platform of living dialogue, not in theory, but in praxis, not in theory, but on an everyday work, as it is these moments that we have shared together during these 2 days. And it's, I would say, a common adventure where we are. Many have asked me, why are you part of CAICID? I think the answer is very simple. If we look at your faces, if we look at you as participants of this conference, some of you have known CAICID before, and some of you have come here for the first time. It's an environment where we teach and we learn. We are not here as masters, but we are here to listen to one another. to listen to the experience that everybody can bring in. And as a representative of the Orthodox Church and of His Holiness, who has been here with us, I would like to say and to repeat the two words that His Holiness mentioned in his speech. First of all, love. Love not only to our friends, but also to our enemies. And this is more difficult. Not only to those who love us, but those who are probably indifferent to us. And this is the basis of dialogue, of a dialogue that is sincere, transparent, and continuous. And this is what CAICID has been doing. A dialogue that, according to my faith, has been based on what the Gospel of Matthew mentions in chapter 5. But a dialogue, as I said, that is a living dialogue, not a dialogue for books or for libraries. It's a dialogue that we live day by day. And I think that for the past 5 years, all of us who have been engaged, and we're very grateful to His Excellency for his commitment, and to the staff as well of CAICID for the commitment and the common work that we are engaged in. In 626, the founder of Islam has mentioned the covenant that has been signed between Muslims and Christians, a covenant that goes unto the last day, and he addresses the Muslims saying that they have to respect this. I think that it's a commitment. And now we don't make any difference between those who are Muslims or Christians or Jews or Buddhists, or those who live in areas where we need the peaceful coexistence, and we're looking for a living experience, as I said, to live in peace and also to respect the common citizenship. I have mentioned that before, that if we have the wisdom and we have love for each other, and if we are looking for peace with hope, we can have really common citizenship, and we shall look at each other not as different, but as people of this world, men and women of different faiths, who can share the peace on earth as it is in heaven. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. May I invite the Reverend Kosho Niwano to give us her brief remarks. Thank you.
CAICIDが活動を始めてから5年間、私は理事会の中で唯一の女性でしたが、今回から2人の新たなボードメンバーを迎え、その1人に長年の友人であるドクター・アルムが入られたこと、CAICIDの中でもジェンダーの多様性が進んでいることを私はとても嬉しく思っています。
For these 5 years, I have been only one female board member of CAICID. But now, I am so pleased to have 2 of new board members, especially one of them is female, my old friend, Dr. Aram. You can see in CAICID itself, the issue of gender is going on process of transformation.
そう、私たちの前にはさまざまな問題が複雑に絡み合い、どうすることもできないような現実があります。答えは簡単には出せません。けれど大切なことが一つあります。それは世界の負を自分ごとと捉えることです。
We are facing with reality, which is beyond our control, with so many issues intertwined in a very complicated way. We cannot find any solution easily. However, there is one thing which seems very important. It is to recognize the negativity of the world as my own issue.
モーゼは10回で殺してはいけないとし、ブッダは欲望の制御を説きました。なぜなら彼らは私たち人間の根源に潜んでいる暴力性を知っていたからです。人間の本質とは利己的な暴力と利他的な思いやりの両方が同居する弱さなのではないかと思います。私たちの歴史はこの弱さを源にした暴力にあふれています。けれど私は人間を信じたいと思います。なぜなら根源の弱さを制御し、歴史に挑戦をした多くの人々がいたからです。
Prophet Moses preaches in 10 commandments not to kill, and Buddha teaches the control of desire, because they knew the violent nature exists in the bottom line of human beings. I think the essence of human being is the weakness of the reality, of coexistence of both selfish violence and selfless compassion. Our history is filled with violence originated from this weakness. But I want to believe in human beings, because there were many people who had been challenging history by controlling this ultimate weakness.
私たちの世界には身に覚えのない試練やいわれのない不平等、矛盾に苦しみ続ける報われない者たちが絶えることなく存在し続けてきました。戦争や暴力、革命が立ち上がってくる裏側には必ずこうした人々の叫びが隠されています。この事実から目をそらすことはできません。
In our world, unrewarding people have always been existing who were suffered from innocent trials, unreasonable inequality, and discrepancy. The shouts of these people are always made hidden behind the rise of war, violence, and certain type of revolution. We should not look away from these facts.
多様性とは豊かさであると同時に複雑さです。私たちはこの複雑さに耐えて生きていかなければなりません。暴力は向こう側やテロリストの側にのみあるのではありません。私たちの中にもあるのです。この自覚に立ってこそ、対話のプラットフォームという新しいシステムの存在価値が発揮されるはずです。
The diversity is complicity as well as affluence. We have to continue to endure this complicity. The violence does not exist only on the other side or on the terrorist side. Violence exists also in myself. With this awareness, the existential value of the new system of dialogue platform shall be fully revealed and manifested.
私たちはこれまで何百年、何千年もの間、宗教が違おうとお互いを尊重して隣人としてこの地球で共生してきました。そこには長年機能してきたシステムがあったはずです。けれどそれが破綻するのを私たちは目撃しつつあります。もちろん全てが間違っていたわけではありません。多様で複雑なものに最適化を起こすことがシステムの目的ですから、システムの要素を入れ替え、境界線を動かすことで新しいシステムが動き出すはずです。 変えられないと思い込んでいたことも動かせるかもしれません。
People of different faiths have been in coexistence on this globe for hundreds and thousands of years as respectful neighbors. There should have been systems in function for many years. But now we are witnessing the system being ended in failure. Of course, all the existing systems were not wrong. Every system is aimed to optimize diverse and complex matters. So if we reshuffle the elements and redraw the borders of system, then new system should start to be activated. It is possible to change what we used to think impossible.
対立していると思い込んでいた相手と対話をしましょう。協力できないと思い込んでいた人々と共に祈り行動しましょう。対話のプラットフォームを最大限に活用し、共に歩み出しましょう。宗教者も政治指導者も自らが愛を実践する最初の一人となることで、世界に、人々の心に火を灯していきましょう。それが神仏の願いであると私は信じています。
Let us dialogue with those who think they are opponent to us. Let us pray and make action with those who are not in cooperation. Let us take a step forward by making the most use of this platform of dialogue. Let both religious and political leaders light people's mind and hearts in the world, becoming the first one to love. That is our mission given by God and Buddha, I am convinced.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Niwano. May I invite His Virtue, Shaykh al-Islam, Allah Shukur Pashzadi.
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim.
In the name of God, the most merciful, the most gracious, praise and blessing be upon our Messenger Muhammad, his family and his companions.
Sulh içinde birge yaşayış ve birge vatandaşlık meselelerine hasır olunmuş yüksek seviyeli forumun iştirakçılarını Azerbaycan, Kafkaz Müslümanları adından samimiyetle selamlıyor. Avstriya torpağında baş tutan görüşümüzün teşkilatçılarına, hususen Doktor Feysel İbni Muammer'e minnettarlığını bildirir. Bu müteber tedbirde kabul olunan kararların region için, bütün dünya için hayırlı olması için Uca Allah'a dua ederim. Büyük memnuniyetle Azerbaycan Respublikası'nın prezidenti Zat-ı Ali'leri Cenab-ı İlham Aliyev'in selamlarını ve hoş arzularını burada temsil olunan tanınmış devlet ve din hadimlerine getirmek istiyorum. Beynelhalk Diyalog Merkezi'nin yeni seçilmiş üzvü kimi kurumun baş katibini ve bütün emektaşlarının teşkilatın beşiliği münasebetiyle yürekten tebrik edir. Gelecek faaliyetimize uca yaradandan yeni nailiyetler arzu ediyorum. Dinler arası diyalogun yeni platforması kimi faaliyet gösteren kaysit hakikaten muasır dünyada büyük ihtiyaç duyulan merama hizmet edir. Belə ki bugün bütün problemlerin fevkinde duran sulhun temini ve korunması üzerinde devlet rehberlerinin içtimai ve dini liderlerin birge emektaşlığı
The English translation of the speech will be read out after His Eminence finishes. Thank you very much.
Birge emektaşlığı ve diyalogundan geçir. Hürmetli beynelhalk forum iştirakçıları, muhtelif dinleri ve medeniyetleri temsil eden insanların eyni toplumda, sulh içinde birge yaşayış ve birge vatandaşlık meselesinde ben Azerbaycan namına olarak dikkatinizde takdim etmek istedim. Temsil ettiğim çok milletli ve çok konfesyonel Azerbaycan'da multikulturalizm bizim hayat tarzımızdır. Din devlet münasebetleri düzgün kurulmuştur. BMT'nin dəstəklədiyi dəyərlərin sırasında mühüm yer tutan vatandaş cəmiyyəti və həqiqi demokratiyanın vacib elementi olan
His virtue is reading the text in Russian. It will be read out to all of you in English, and interpretation will be provided in Arabic and French. Thank you.
Etnik ve dini mensubiyete malik vatandaşlarımızın demokratik insan hukukları, o cümleden dini etikat azadlıkları kanunla tespit ve temin olunur. Zannimce toplum içinde multikultural ve tolerantlık muhitinin başlıca şartlar tarafından aparılan məhz belə bir siyaset ve düzgün kurulmuş devletli münasibətleridir. Dinler arası, konfesiyalar arası, həmçinin mezhepler arası həmrəyliyin nadir nümunəsinə malik Azərbaycan hal-hazırda mədəniyyətlər, dinlər arası diyaloqa dair qlobal beynəlxalq tədbirlərin ənəvi ünvanı kimi tanınır. Biz bu mövqeyi müstəqil Azərbaycanda davamlı, müstəqil şəkildə aparılan siyasət sayəsində əldə etmişik. Hörmətli konferans iştirakçıları, dünyanın bütün ənənəvi dinləri bəşərə sülh əminamanlıq, qarşılıq, danlaşma, qardaşlıq ideyalarını təlqin edir. Bugün dinlər arası diyalog məhz bu həqiqətlərin bərqərarına, ələl xüsus bütün problemlərin fövqündə duran sülhün qorunmasına xidmət edir. Azərbaycan dövlətinin təmsilçisi, dini lider, Şeyxülislam olaraq şəxsin bu işə hər müstəvidə dəstək verir və bu istiqamətdə atılan addımları alqışlayıram. Üzvü olmaqdan məmnunluq duyduğum Kaysit platformasının bu yöndə səmərəli fəaliyyətinə böyük uğurlar və yeni nailiyyətlər arzu edirəm. Bir daha öz minnətdarlığımı bildirirəm. Allah köməyiniz olsun. Selamun aleyküm və rəhmətullah.
We will wait for a few minutes until the translation is being read now for you in English, as I understand. Just give me a sign when you finish reading the translation. Was a delay in the translation? Yes, yes. Thank you, and again, apology for this glitch in translation. This is our 7th language in this conference. May I invite Reverend Mark Paulson, and also to say that we will make the speech of his virtue available to everyone also to read in English and Arabic.
There's a great film, if you haven't seen it, called Lost in Translation. I heartily recommend it to you. Your Beatitudes, your Eminences, your Excellencies, sisters and brothers, blips aside, and all of us are talkers, and we like to interact. The fact is, thanks to the extraordinary staff of CAICEED, we have been given a masterclass in how to construct a platform for dialogue. We've listened a lot, we've been provoked and challenged and stimulated by all the riches contained within this room and the places that we represent. We've had the opportunity to feedback, to interact, and also to have amazing opportunities to network outside as well. Platforms and the building of them involve huge preparation and care. They don't happen by accident. And they're only effective, as we've heard, if they're locally relevant, but also locally inspired, if they're broad and representative. And it's no point talking about women and young people if they're not here. We need to be intentional and look beyond the ceremonial in our invitations. Platforms need to be authentic and rooted in practice. That great line from yesterday, we live dialogue. I'm still concerned that we are in denial about the extent to which religion can be the motivation for violence. I think it always has been within my Christian tradition. The fact is, scriptures can be used for ill as well as for good. Interpretation of scripture is still the battleground for all of us. But if we deny others the identity in faith that they claim, then we push them to the margins. And ultimately, we abdicate our responsibility to call them through faith, through scripture, to change and to put down their arms. The challenge for all of us is to go back to our communities, to use this amazing example of hospitality, of generosity, of staff who go the extra mile, as Jesus said. That generosity of spirit, that openness, actually inviting extraordinary staff in one place. And I want to credit our Secretary General, who has managed to attract people from all around the world to work for CAICEED and to make it the dynamic place that it is. Thank you to you for your generosity of spirit. Thank you for telling the stories that you have done. Let's continue the conversation. Let's continue to be frustrated by one another, provoked and challenged by one another. Let's continue to be in the same space and the same platform together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. May I invite Chief Rabbi David Rosen for his brief remarks. Thank you.
Distinguished religious leaders, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I probably could just stand here and say, I sign on to everything that my predecessors have said and sit down, and you will probably be very happy with that, having had to sit through rather an arduous program. But I hopefully will not overtax your presence. I would like to pick up upon initially the observations of both Reverend Paulson and Reverend Niwano, with an initial observation and then perhaps a very brief reflection. I have listened carefully and to the best of my ability very quietly over the course of these last 2 days to some very insightful comments. But all too often I have heard, as we have just listened to, the observation that we are spending our time substantially in self-justification. This is understandable. We are all, in some way or another, victims of historical or contemporary conflicts, and therefore we always want to put our best foot forward and to be able to explain why we are virtuous and why we are good, and why each of our countries is a model of coexistence and collaboration and all the wonderful things. And even if it's correct that the conflicts that we are talking about are not religious in origin, it still begs the question, why is it that religion is so easily exploited? And in that context, surely it behoves us, if we are able to show a certain amount of humility and to confess that we have failed in extolling the most noble values of our respective traditions adequately amongst our communities. And therefore, if we are to be credible, we have to both have the capacity to repent, the capacity to confess our limitations, and our ability to be self-critical. This is not easy, but this is the challenge. If we want to be credible in this world today, in our modern world in which the truth is across the globe religions are minorities, or at least certainly within the Western world, within much of the area where the power agencies lie, if we want to be credible, then we have to have the capacity for self-criticism and to be able to recognize our own limitations, and not to come along, as unfortunately we've heard on 1 or 2 occasions over the course of the last 2 years, and to be able to excoriate and condemn someone else while presenting oneself as all virtuous. We all have our failings, and we all have our limitations, and we have our responsibilities to be self-critical. But allow me now to conclude with just a reflection. In fact, it was last month at the wonderful gathering, Washington, D.C., initiated by Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayah of Alliance of Virtue for the Common Good, that I think I realized almost in the course of conversation the deeper meaning of a very important verse in the Hebrew Bible and a very important verse in the Holy Quran. The verse in the Hebrew Bible comes from the prophet Malachi, who says, then those who revere the Lord spoke with one another, and the Lord wrote it down in a book. The Lord heard and listened, and it was written down before him. The verse from the Holy Quran has already been referred to, a very well-known verse, of course, in Surah 49, verse 13. O humankind, we have created you from a single couple, male and female, and made you into nations and tribes in order that you may know one another. These verses beg the question, what is it that the prophet Malachi sees so significant in the fact that 2 people are talking to one another, that God has to hear and listen and take note of it? And what is it that the Holy Quran suggests is so significant in getting to know one another? What's the big deal? The big deal is that in talking with one another and getting to know one another, when we truly do so, when we truly talk and we truly learn about one another, then we cannot talk with the same stereotypes, generalizations, and with the same tendency to demonize as we do when we don't know one another, when we don't talk to one another. And that is why dialogue is so important. We should never talk about dialogue as just a dialogue. It is not just dialogue. It is the discovery of the divine presence in the other. It is the discovery of the integrity, the value of those different from ourselves. And it is above all the key to peace, because when we truly dialogue, when we truly meet, when we truly know one another, then we cannot behave towards one another in the way we can when we are alienated from one another. That is why such a gathering is so important. That is why the Kaisit Center is so important. That is why it's not just dialogue. Dialogue must never be dismissed as such, for the talk is the encounter. It is the knowledge. It is the overcoming of misunderstanding, misrepresentation, and hostility. And may we be worthy of these verses, of these charges from our scriptures, to make the world a better place that truly glorifies the Creator of us all his children, all created in the divine fabric. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi Rosen. And finally, or last but not least, Dr. Mohammed Samak, have a brief remarks.
Well, esteemed brothers and sisters, I hope you have enough left patience to listen to the last speaker this evening. But I'll try to say something out of the box. Dear religious leaders, ladies and gentlemen, the world is changing. It's changing fast and deep. But the concept of the other in our different cultures and traditions is not changing. On the contrary, it is becoming more rigid, hard, and extremist. Let me give you two examples. One, Christianity until the dawn of the 19th century was mainly European and American. 85% of Christians of that time were in these two continents. Now, 1/3 of the Christians are in Africa alone. A second third of Christians is in Asia and South America. This change means that Christianity is not anymore the religion of the white, of the rich, of the powerful alone. Christianity now is also the religion of the colored, of the poor, and of the oppressed. Also, Christianity is not isolated from other religions. Christians of different denominations live side by side with Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, Jews, etc. The fundamental change is not taken well into consideration and is not clearly focused on a new culture vis-à-vis the other. Let me give you another example. There are about 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. Today, 600 million of them, almost 1/3, live in countries and communities that are non-Muslims. In India, China, Europe, America, etc. This is a very fundamental change too. But here again, this change is not clearly focused in a new culture vis-à-vis the other. By a new culture, I mean a culture based on the principles of accepting and respecting differences, human dignity, and freedom of conscience, and freedom of belief. These principles form the bridge of conviviality or living together between peoples of different religions and of different ethnicities. We in CAICID, with the guidance of our Secretary General, we believe that this is a noble humanitarian mission. We adopted this mission, but we are realistic. We know very well that we cannot do it alone. No other organization can do it alone, not even the United Nations. This is a collective human effort. This is why we in CAICID believe that our center is a hub, an international hub for all centers which share this culture of bridge building. This conference is one of many other initiatives we have already taken so far to fulfill this noble goal. I can see among you many who have already participated in our previous initiatives. We are happy to continue our cooperation with you, realizing that bridge building is a daily, continuous work. It is not something that can be accomplished. The beauty of it is that it is a bridge between hearts and minds and souls of people of different cultures and of different religions. A bridge that you can feel, but you cannot see. Today, with this deep demographic change, I gave you the two examples, all over the world, the rise of fanaticism and extremism on one hand, due to the misinterpretation of religious texts, and the rise of religious phobia, mainly Islamophobia, on the other hand, here also due to the misunderstanding of religious texts, humanity needs more than any time before to promote the culture of religious freedom to go parallel with the new demographic change that sweeps all continents without exception. Dear brothers and sisters, we cannot live together in peace and harmony if we don't know the otherness of the other. Because the more I give the other a place in my heart and in my soul, the more I understand the other, and the better I understand myself. With this, CAICID understands you more and understands itself better as an organization based on religious and cultural plurality and dedicated to promote this culture with you and for you all over the world. If we succeed, it is your success. And if we don't, Well, the mercy of God is the bridge between what we think is good and what we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Samak. As you could see, it was worth it to hear the self-critique, the compassionate, and the gender-sensitive, and the visionary, I think the common values that inspire us in our work in CAICID in a very diverse way, not only linguistically, but in many other ways. One point, on our website, the speech of His Virtue, Pashzadi, already posted on our website. Please, you can access it. There is copies in English available on the tables already, just to make sure you receive that message. Allow me to invite our Secretary General to cross this marathonic line with us to the finish line.
Well, thank you very much, esteemed religious leader. Ladies and gentlemen, I was thinking what to say, but if I want to express my feeling to you, I need minimum 2 hours. So, listening to our esteemed boards, I can give them all A+. It's really, they did excellent job to express what we are doing at CAICID. Second, if I close my eyes and go back to 2010, before the establishment of the center, if you ask me if I am a believer of what I am doing, I will say no. It was a huge challenge. The mission could be impossible. Things which can be really, when I talk to everybody, they said, oh, you are a man coming from Saudi Arabia, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, you are a Muslim, and you are a dreamer coming to talk. You want to lead these institutions to bring people to the dialogue table. That's really impossible. And it's not acceptable. Well, I think the dream was one of these dreams which can be possible. I was fortunate to be under the umbrella of 3 states, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the Republic of Austria, and the Kingdom of Spain, and the Holy See as a founding observer. I was fortunate to work with a great team of our board. I remember every single minute I spent it with them. And I remember listening to their advices and their stories. I remember when they talked to me about knowing each other. I am not going to tell you about this because it's hard to speak after Chief Rabbi David Rosen. Thank God he's not a politician, I will elect him. He knows really how to do it. I would ask him to open a training school. I will join this training school one day. Anyway, we were building walls of fear between us. I witnessed many crises in the region. I was really very close to see what happened in Afghanistan, what happened in Iraq, what happened in different parts of our region. And since September 11th, everybody is talking about how to eliminate extremism, how to eliminate or destroy terrorists, how to kill them, how to get rid of them, how to run after them, and we try almost everything. Military solution, political solutions. And going through this journey through CAICID, I can tell you, we have so many things to do, and we can do it. religious leaders, they have so many things. If we believe that religion is part of the solution, not the cause of the problem, and can be possible. The other things, we always talk about these terrorists as they are the general player of whatever they do. In fact, the majority of the silent people we should really bring to the dialogue table. And they are the one who can really help us fight extremism or terrorists. And that's really what we want to do. And through what we are doing, we can bring the majority to be in the front line to fight extremism and terrorists. And that's really not impossible. We tried it, I witnessed it. And the other thing I want to say, that we don't want really recommendations and the theoretical things. We believed in this center that we are a doer. We want to get ideas, result, and to implement it. We want to implement. That's why when I made the tour going to Lebanon and to go to Egypt and meeting religious leaders of the Arab countries, Muslim and Christians and others, I was honored when I met all of them. And every time I go to their offices or their homes, I was received like a messenger of peace. I was honored by all of them to tell me that we will be with you. We want to show the whole world that we can do it. And they did it. Yesterday we saw them all standing from everywhere. They are the leader of religious communities, and I appreciate really each one of them deserve that I shake their hand and say thank you. Thank you from the deepest of my heart, because what you are doing is going to be a stamp in the history of the region, of the whole world. All the media in the world, some politicians, when they speak, they think Christian and Muslims, they never talk to each other in our region. In fact, if we go back to thousands of years, if we go back to 1,400 years, if we read the Declaration of Medina, if we read all the stories, fantastic stories from the book of history, we will know that so many things are really, it is the living with each other, living as neighbors, living as brothers and sisters. But what happened in the last 30 years, this is really what we are suffering from, and we cannot accept it. We have to reject it. We've been kidnapped. We've been kidnapped by many ways. But I believe that we have a responsibility. I thank really everybody. And allow me, please, to say special thanks to my bigger brother, who I really asked him to join us. And he was asked by the custodian of the two holy mosques to join us. And he is the imam of the two holy mosques. When he speaks every Friday, minimum 1 billion people, they will listen to the speech of the two holy mosques from the holy mosque of Mecca. That's really one of the examples. I know many leaders, the Christian leaders. I know many Muslims from Egypt, from Lebanon, from Syria, from Iraq, Christian and Muslims. When they speak to their followers, I think that's really one of the strongest message we have. More than that, they are now part of the platform. They will be really members and active members, and that's the way we can do it. Sorry to give you, but I have to express my feeling to this evening to you after 2 days. Every time we do an event, I said to myself, this is the last event I will do. But I can tell you, when I saw the result of what happened yesterday and today, I am going to be one of the volunteers to work until, I don't know when. Second, many of our board thank me for what I did as a Secretary General. I can tell you something. To tell you the truth, the last 1 year I was so busy, but they use me as a decoration sometimes, you know. Our staff in the center, whenever they need me, they just ask me to come and say, okay, please, can you sit in the front so we can use your name, we can use... They are the one who did everything. Really excellent staff. They did whatever they can. I can thank you them all from everyone of the staff, male and female. They did excellent job. And I am so happy that they did what... We are also have the senior staff and the senior advisors who work, and some of them really they work extra than some the others. But you know, I don't want really to specify some of them. But it is really the thanks goes to everybody. So we appreciate the role of every one of them. Second, I would like to thank the translators. They are excellent there. They did a good job, I think. They try even with his virtue, our Mufti here, he was really trying, they were trying to translate and they did their best, but you know, it's really going to work. I would like to thank also the media. The media, they did a good job covering this. You know, I felt today, this morning, when I looked at the Austrian media, that we are honored to open a new page with the Austrian media. I think they are going to support us, and I am a strong believer of this. I would like to thank everyone who served this conference, whether from this hotel or from drivers or whatever, airports or anybody who, and I apologize from every one of our guests if there is any shortages of service or anything, but we did our best. We are in Vienna. We never thought that February will be -8. So I have to apologize. But you know, we've been asked by some of you, they never seen snow in their life, so they want to see the snow. That's why we asked God to send us some snow, and He accepted our prayer. What I can say after all of this, that my office, they wrote a lot of things in this paper. I will not read it. But what I can tell you, I can assure you that we will go on, we will implement this platform, we will work day and night to do our service as you expected, and we will continue our work in Africa, in Central African Republic, in Nigeria, in Myanmar, in the Arab world, and first in Europe. We will build the bridges, we will connect people, and we are grateful to you. You are our main player. You are the one who will do the job for us because you are our partner. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. We all work very hard to get a good meal in the second floor. In the first floor, buffet style, open until 9 o'clock. Socialize, eat, and enjoy the company. Thank you. Thank you all. Board members.